You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner, the Arsenal podcast.
I'm Martin Tyler, and you're listening to Harry Symeou.
Hello and welcome back to the Chronicles of a Gooner, the Arsenal podcast, brought to you by 90 Min. And it's the transfer update show. We are back for the January transfer window throughout the month of January and over the next couple of days as well, leading into the window. We're going to be bringing you daily streams in which we go through the biggest transfer related rumours and stories with regards to the Arsenal. We break them down. We try and put a bit of a reliability rating on them, and we'll be sharing, of course, our views on those stories. So looking forward to bringing you this series throughout the month of January. If you haven't already, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. That way you will never miss an episode. Turn on the notifications as well, and that way you'll be notified each and every time we're going to go live. And it is going to be daily, so plenty of content coming your way. So make sure you don't miss it. Don't forget as well, while you're here and while I've got your attention at the very start of this podcast, make sure you smash the like button if you haven't already done so. It really, really does help. And if you're listening to us via any of the audio platforms, please do leave us a review. It means the absolute world to us. Thank you so much in advance. Right, we've got a few stories that we're going to be discussing on today's edition of the show. I'm going to be taking you through those stories, but I also want to hear from you guys in the live chat. I want to hear your thoughts on the stories that I'm going to talk about. And I also want your questions, because towards the back end of this live broadcast, we'll be picking up as many of those as we possibly can. And I'll be sharing my thoughts with you guys on anything that you want to ask about. So get involved in the live chat as well. Right, let's begin by discussing the stories linking Arsenal with a move for Borussia Dortmund's Julian Brandt. Now, of course, stories have been doing the rounds over the last few days, saying that Arsenal have turned their attention to Julian Brandt, and interest in Lyon's Symeou has cooled. Now, it says Arsenal are reportedly contemplating a move for Borussia Dortmund star Julian Brandt, having called their interest in Lyon's Symeou. And then it goes on to talk about Mikel Arteta's team lacking creativity this season, and that the team is crying out for an attacking midfielder. The Athletic, though, have claimed that Symeou has fallen down the pecking order, and their report goes on to say that that Dortmund's brand, has caught the North London club's eye, despite the fact he's only started 6 Bundesliga matches this season. 24-year-old joined Dortmund from Bayer Leverkusen for £22.9 million in the summer of 2019 and went on to contribute 7 goals and 13 assists in 42 appearances across all competitions in his first season. But he has not quite had that same impact so far this season, managing just 1 goal and 1 assist in 22 games. Brandt, it says here, has plenty of competition at the Signal Iduna Park and could well be tempted by the prospect of instantly becoming a central part of the first team setup at Arsenal. So Julian Brandt is somebody that Arsenal are being linked with. And as I put out a little tweet yesterday, I've got to be 100% open and honest about this. I don't want to lie to you guys. I don't want to sit here and feed you a load of bullshit, for wanting of a better term. What I've seen of Julian Brandt isn't a great deal, but I will give you my view and my thoughts on Brandt based on that little that I've seen of him. Now, if you cast your minds back to when football restarted after the initial lockdown, the Bundesliga was the league that kicked off first. The Bundesliga led the way in terms of getting football back on our television screens, getting the sport back underway. And some of you will probably remember, if you were subscribers of the channel back then, that I was doing some commentaries for Total Football Analysis, and we were covering the Bundesliga. And I was fortunate enough to cover probably 6 or 7 Borussia Dortmund games in that first few weeks after the restart. So I did watch a fair amount of Borussia Dortmund. And Julian Brandt was a starter then. Julian Brandt started pretty much all of those games from memory. And I thought looked a really, really excellent player. He's somebody who picked up the ball in really dangerous spaces, enjoyed playing in between the lines, a very clever passer of the ball, somebody with good movement. A very sophisticated footballer for me, somebody that reminded me a little bit of a peak Mesut Ozil in the type of positions that he picked up, and combined excellently with Dortmund's fantastic wide players, and of course their centre forward as well. So I was very, very much impressed by what I'd seen of Julian Brandt at that point. But of course, I do put that caveat in there that it wasn't a huge sample size in terms of games. Now, from what I understand, things haven't quite gone as well for Julian Brandt this season with Borussia Dortmund. But that doesn't mean that he's become a bad player overnight. Sometimes you see footballers make certain moves and it just doesn't work out for whatever reason. It could be because the manager and that particular player aren't exactly on the same wavelength. It could be because of the players around them not necessarily complementing their style. Borussia Dortmund had a bit of a have had a bit of a dodgy start to the season as well, hence why Lucien Favre was shown the door. So yeah, there's a lot of reasons that that could be the case as to why Julian Brandt hasn't necessarily succeeded at Borussia Dortmund this season. But when you look at our current options in that position, and Arsenal have made it very, very clear that of course Mesut Ozil is no longer in the picture, then you have to start to think that actually somebody like Julian Brandt, who could probably be available for a reasonable amount of money, I say reasonable this day and age, it might make him a sensible choice and somebody that Arsenal will consider. What I find interesting about that report, though, is the fact that we're supposedly not so keen on Symeou anymore. Could it have been that Arsenal actually were never that keen, and that's why they opted to do the Thomas Partey deal instead? Because I tell you one thing, and I said it at the time and I'll say it again now, had Arsenal slapped £45 million on the table like they did in the end for Thomas Partey, for Symeou, I think that Jean-Michel Aulas would have sold. So maybe there were reservations at that point about Symeou. Not saying that is 100% the case, but I am speculating that it might have been, and perhaps that's why Arsenal opted to go for Thomas Partey, when many of us at the time felt that Symeou was the primary target. Big hello to everybody watching us live at the moment. Before we continue, just going to urge you guys to quickly smash that like button if you haven't already. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. As I said on the stream earlier on today, actually, around about 46% of you that are watching these videos at the moment are not subscribed. So why not smash that button? It is really important. It really, really helps. And of course, the like button too. Big hello to Kevin Campbell. Kevin, I'll hopefully get you on soon. He says, hi, Harry. Hope you're well, and Merry Christmas to you and all the viewers, and to you, my friend. He says, we need to concentrate on young, hungry signings who want to win, as well as getting certain players out. Yeah, agreed. Agreed. And just going back to the Julian Brandt point, this is a guy who's, hit a little bit of a brick wall in terms of his development, but he's still only 24 years old, and he's somebody who could, I think, come in, improve this side immediately. And once he settles, I think he's a really good talent and somebody that could go on to have a pretty successful career at Arsenal Football Club over a long period of time. So I'm not dead against this one. Like I said, I've watched Brandt 5-6 occasions closely. I'm talking about games I've commentated on, so I would have been focused fully on those games. It wasn't me, pissing around on my phone whilst having the game on in the background. I would have watched him very, very closely. And if these rumours do progress, if it does look like there is anything more in this, then I'll be bringing on a Bundesliga expert to sit alongside me on this show and give you guys the full download on Julian Brandt and maybe why it hasn't quite gone his way in recent times for Borussia Dortmund. So that's the first report we're going to discuss today. Arsenal are said to have turned their attention to Julian Brandt after cooling their interest in Houssem Aouar. Interesting. Let me know about what you guys have to say on that one in the live comments. I can see some of you already making your feelings known on Julian Brandt. Let's share a couple of those actually before we move on. Let's see. Scunny says Brandt was a beast at Leverkusen. I think everybody really admired what he did at Bayer Leverkusen, and I thought that the move to Dortmund was a good one. And as I said, from what I saw of him at the back end of last season, he looked pretty good. But it is a little bit of a mystery maybe as to why it's not quite gone so well for him, of late, and why he finds himself now in the position that he does. Christian Hoover also says, bro, Brandt is class. He is superb. You guys agreeing with it that Julian Brandt could be someone that could enhance this Arsenal team and, of course, improve it. Right, let's move on to the next story that I want to touch on, and that is with regards to the future of Hector Bellerin. Arsenal are said to be preparing for the exit of Hector Bellerin, with Barcelona keen on taking him back to Catalonia, and that Arsenal would be reportedly ready to make a move for Brighton's Tariq Lamptey in the event that he moved on. Tariq Lamptey is a player that really excites me. I think he's been outstanding every time I've seen him play for Brighton. I think he's got incredible pace, power, drive, talent on the ball. I think he defends very well as well. And, I know Chelsea had a bit of an issue, didn't they, where they had to decide whether to keep Tariq Lamptey or whether Reece James was the one they were going to stick with. They went with Reece James in the end. Tariq Lamptey ended up joining Brighton. But I think that they're both as good as each other. I'd probably argue, actually, that Lamptey, probably his ceiling, in my view, based on what I've seen of the pair, is probably higher. And I really like the player, and I would absolutely love to see Tariq Lamptey come to the Arsenal. Now, I'd imagine that if Brighton were to part company with Tariq Lamptey, I think that they would probably be looking for some serious money, around about 30-40 million pounds would be my prediction. But having said that, and I know Barcelona are a little bit cash strapped at the moment, and there's been a lot of talk about that. According to transfermarket.co.uk, Bellerin still holds a value of around about 25 million pounds. So if you could get something in that region, 20 to 25 million pounds for Hector Bellerin, I think that would be good business. And if it meant that you could fund most of the Tariq Lamptey deal to replace him for the longer term, I'd be absolutely all for that. As Alexander Ross says, Lamptey would be a great investment, and great to rub it in Chelsea's faces as well. Scunny also says, if the money is right for Bellerin, then it's time to let him go. Let's see what else you guys are saying. Indigeno says, foul throw FC on its way to Barca. I'm okay with this, even if Lamptey doesn't come in. Alexander, I've already read that one. Apologies, just clicking on the same one. Look, I think most Arsenal fans out there would agree that Tariq Lamptey would be an excellent signing, a really exciting young player, and somebody I think we'd all love to see come in the door at the Emirates Stadium. But as I said, if we were to go after Tariq Lamptey, I think Arsenal would have to spend a significant amount of money to get him in the door. And I think if we could sell Bellerin to fund some of that, it would be fantastic. Omar says Lamptey would be a great signing. Send the fashionista packing. He also continues on Lamptey and says he's such a brilliant young prospect. So many people backing that idea of Tariq Lamptey coming to the Emirates Stadium. That report originally comes from the Mirror. The report focuses on Barcelona's reported interest in Hector Bellerin, and it says that the Barcelona presidential candidate Joan Laporta, who of course had a spell as the Barcelona president previously, and is now favourite to win the election, and I quote, wants Bellerin. So there we go. There we go. So there's a chance that Barcelona might come after Hector Bellerin, and Arsenal seemingly are considering Tariq Lamptey as a long-term replacement for Hector Bellerin, and what a long-term replacement that would be. Let's move on to another story, and those are the reports linking Arsenal with a move for Emiliano Buendia from Norwich, according to Ekrem Gooner, a Turkish journalist who's normally pretty good with some of the reports. He says that Norwich are asking around about 15 million euros for the attacking midfielder. Now, let me know in the comments, would you have Buendia? I've said it on previous shows, and I'll say it again for those of you who haven't caught those. I've never been completely sold on Emi Buendia, partly because of the level that he's been playing at. And I know that sounds like a really snobbish thing to say, and probably something that, as an Arsenal fan right now, when you take into consideration the way we're playing, it probably isn't a fair thing to say. But I'm always wary of his record and the way people blow it out of proportion because of the fact that he plays for Norwich. You know, Emi Buendia is 24 years old. He's still playing in the Championship. I don't necessarily see a queue of clubs lining up to get him. He's 24 years old. You'd have felt that, I think, at this point, that he would have moved on if there was that much interest in him, if the interest that we keep hearing about was that genuine and was that concrete. You know, he's made 17 appearances in the Championship so far this season. He scored 6 goals and 7 assists, so 13 direct goal contributions in 17 games, which makes really, really impressive reading. But, I mean, it's the Championship, and I can't get away from that fact. And I also see people in the chat talking about Todd Cantwell as well, and I would make the same argument about Todd Cantwell too. It's not about, and some of you are saying that you can't rule out the lower league players, Harry. It's not about ruling out the lower league players. I think that somebody like, some of the players that have come from the lower leagues, that you can count them on one hand how many of them have actually been majorly successful, I would say, in recent seasons. I'm talking about people like Jamie Vardy, who came from the lower leagues and has been fantastic for Leicester. Robertson came from the lower leagues, but Robertson played a bit in the Premier League with Hull, and Robertson is an incredible talent. I don't think you get that many of those, is the point I'm trying to make. Keir Ellis points out in the chat as well. Ollie Watkins is another one. Yeah, Ollie Watkins is another one. But I don't think there are a massive volume of those types of players. And at a time when Arsenal are so desperate for creativity, if we were talking about bringing in an additional creative player, things were pretty good anyway. And you're talking about bringing in an additional creative player, and Emi Buendia at £15 million, 15 million euros, whatever it is an option. I'd be okay with that. But we're talking about somebody coming in to be our first choice, number 10, if you like, our first choice creative midfield outlet. And I just haven't seen enough of Buendia to hang my hat on him and to 100% categorically say that he could cut it at Arsenal Football Club. It's not me being a snob. It might come across that way. It might sound that way. And I also appreciate that at the current times, at £15 million, it might be a really appealing deal for the club. But I just, if he does come in, I'd love to see him come and do very, very well, obviously. But I'm just not 100% sold on Emi Buendia and that he's the answer to Arsenal's creative issues. I really am not. And to a degree, if he can stay fit, I probably prefer Emil Smith-Rowe to play over Buendia. I'd go as far as saying that, because I feel like Emil Smith-Rowe, in terms of his talent, in terms of his ability, probably has a higher ceiling than Buendia. And the fact that Buendia is 24 and still plays his football at Norwich, for me, is a massive black mark against his name. And, I as I said, I don't mean to sound like an absolute snob, but I just don't see it. I just don't see it. I just don't see it. Matt says, yes, please. I'd really like him. Don't be a snob, Harry. Yeah, look, and I know there are a lot of Arsenal fans out there who would love to see Buendia come in. I don't mind seeing Buendia come in, but in addition to someone else. I don't think that Arsenal as a football club, given our current struggles, given the current issues that we have, and given where we are in the bigger picture and where we are in the grand scheme of things, should be relying on a 24-year-old Buendia from Norwich to come in and save us. I'm not there. I can't be there just yet. Anyway, Hambo says Robertson from relegated Hull. Buendia may have a point to prove as his last chance. Omar says Harry, he was brilliant in a poor Norwich side last season. I thought that Norwich side was so bad there wasn't anyone who was brilliant. I thought Pukki started the season brilliantly, but it didn't last. Nej says Atletico and Valencia are interested. Then by all means, Atletico and Valencia, put your money where your mouth is and make a bid. At the moment, he's being very heavily linked with a move to Arsenal, and I haven't seen much else in terms of other clubs. If one of those clubs come in and sign him, fine, but I think we're bigger than those two clubs, and I think we, particularly in Valencia's case, where they haven't really, fought for much in recent years. I think we've got to be aiming higher than Buendia. I really do. And I would prefer Brandt. I would prefer Julian Brandt. I really would. Obviously, that will probably cost a lot more money, but it is what it is. Let's see what you guys are saying as well in the chat. I'll pick up a few of your comments, and then we'll move on to the next story. And then I'll ask you guys to put your questions in to the live chat. Keir says, I would sign Buendia and Brentford's keeper Raya from the Championship. I think Raya would be an upgrade on Renarsson. Yeah, I don't disagree with that. Xander says 15 million would be decent business, but don't believe Norwich would take such a low amount. Brad says the Championship is tougher than the Premier League in many people's opinion. Tougher in what way though? Physically, yeah, it's more demanding. But it isn't a better standard of football than the Premier League. There's no doubt. There's no question about that. Christian says Buendia feels like he ends up at Leicester, and everyone says, why didn't we move for him? Hold fire on your questions, guys. I will pick those up a little bit later on. I'll probably ask you to put them back in the chat because they do disappear after a little while. Russ is also of the opinion that Buendia could be a decent option. He says Liverpool have bought in players from lower English clubs. It's all about scouting. Lots of you sort of back in the idea of Emi Buendia. I just can't get on board with it at the moment. I've got to be honest. Crypto Money Team says Depay and Hakan Çalhanoğlu are out of contract in the summer. These free transfers might be good additions on a cheap, and I'd also take a Campbell and a Buendia. Brad Richardson says James Maddison. I'd like to see James Maddison come here, but I can't see that. Alexander Ross says Isco would be cheaper than Buendia. I'm not 100% sure about that. Matt Gray says, I appreciate what you're saying, Harry, but do you think he's an improvement on what we have? Again, talking about Buendia. Yes. But I'd rather give Smith Rowe the chance to develop. That's my honest opinion. I don't think Buendia is as good as Mesut Ozil, but the club have made it clear that he's heading out the door at the earliest possible opportunity. So I think I think Buendia would add something, yeah. But is he good enough for where Arsenal are aspiring to be? I'm not saying he can't be, but I from what I've seen, I can't with any degree of confidence say that he absolutely is. Let's see what else you guys are saying. Lots of people backing my point on Emil Smith Rowe. Ricardo E says buy Pedro Neto or Barnes. Now Pedro Neto is a player I'd love to see at Arsenal, and I put a tweet out last night actually because I found it really interesting watching Neto over the last few months, because when Wolves sold Jota to Liverpool, everybody was going, oh my God, I can't believe that Wolves let Jota go and that they only got £35 million or whatever it was for him. And lo and behold, Pedro Neto has come to the forefront. Pedro Neto and Daniel Podenza, by the way, who's also been incredible for Nuno Espirito Santo's side. I think they are two really talented players, both of whom I'd like to see in an Arsenal shirt. Let's see what else we've got here. Some people suggesting that Christian Eriksen should be an option. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Kevin Campbell chipping in on the debate. He says, this is the problem with some Arsenal fans. Godfrey from Norwich, who went to Everton, has been outstanding and is so versatile. You probably would have said Lee Dixon and Steve Bold weren't good enough for the Arsenal back then. We need hungry players, not mercenaries. I'm not saying that there aren't any players that you can pick up from lower leagues who will do well. I'm not saying that. When I've watched Emiliano Buendia play, he doesn't inspire me. He doesn't inspire me. And that's why he wouldn't be high up the list for me, or as high up the list for me as some. I just don't see it. I just really don't see, the amazing fuss. For all the players that have come up from the lower leagues and done well, there have been plenty who've scored goals in the Championship and come to the Premier League and not done it. So I think there's a bit of a balance to be struck here in this debate. And Kevin, you reference players like Lee Dixon, Steve Bold, who obviously joined Arsenal in the past, and all valid points, of course. But football has changed a great deal, hasn't it, since then? That was the way to do it, to go and find players in the lower leagues that maybe hadn't been picked up, hadn't been noticed yet. It wasn't like it is today, where you can go and pick up a top Ligue 1 player or a top Eredivisie player. There wasn't so many transfers between clubs on the continent and clubs here in the UK. And so, and I'm not saying that those players weren't good or that they don't deserve any of the credit they do. Of course they do. But the game has just changed. It has changed, hasn't it? So, yeah, I would be cautious about Buendia, but that's just my opinion. And obviously, you're all entitled to share yours. That's the whole point of the chat box. And we will debate it respectfully, of course, at all times. Let's see what else you guys are saying. LFC Track Guy says, hi, just got recommended this stream. Thank you for joining us, mate. Welcome. Let's see what else we've got in the live chat too. Before we pick up on the next story, Kevin Jean says Neto is an Arsenal fan. That sounds great, and it sounds like he's destined for the Emirates Stadium. There you go. Kangaroo agrees with me. Buendia overrated. Dan Potts says, as long as Granit Xhaka doesn't get dropped, I'm a happy man, Harry. Where is he? Here he is. Granit, the voodoo Granit that's going to come out ahead of every game now. Granit's model sent to me by Dan Potts for Secret Santa. The model that I put in front of my TV on the side we were attacking when Granit Xhaka rifled that stupendous free kick in the other day against Chelsea Football Club. So cheers for that, Dad. You've inspired Granit Xhaka's performances of late, or his performance the other day. Kevin Campbell also goes on to say football's still about winners and hunger. The game hasn't changed that much, in my opinion, mate. Winning football matches is what it's all about. Yeah, of course, though winning and hunger, of course, they're up there. But when I say the game's changed, I mean that you can go abroad and get someone who is just as talented for less money now, because the knowledge of those leagues is there. The understanding and the deeper knowledge of those leagues is there, and it wasn't in the 80s. And let's be honest, 80s, early 90s, we talk so often about how Arsene Wenger revolutionized scouting and changed the way, the British clubs looked at doing transfer business, and he absolutely did. And that's why we got, Patrick Vieira, Emmanuel Petit, Sylvain Wiltord, Thierry Henry, so many top quality players, Robert Pires, who, had they been playing for other English clubs, would have cost us double the money. That's the point I'm making, that there is a better knowledge and a better understanding now of the quality of players on the continent, and clubs now have a wider pool to select from. Let's see what else we've got here. You know what? Let's move on to the next story, and then we'll come back to the comments section. So keep your comments coming, keep your questions coming. Like the video if you haven't already. Let's check in actually on how many likes we've got at present. Let's have a good look. Where is it on my phone? Here we go. Let's have a look at how many of you are currently with us and how many of you have liked the video. Just 59 likes, but there's over 230 30 of you watching us across the multiple platforms, guys. So if you haven't already, please do smash that like button. It is so important. A couple of you asking if I would take where is it? Sorry, AA FIFA 2000. Would you take Puig from Barca? Is that how you say it? I'm not even sure that's how you say it. But I've seen a few sort of links with this guy, 21-year-old Ricky Puig. Have I even said that right? I don't know. Apologies if I haven't. But he's not someone I have a great knowledge of, and not someone I know an awful lot about. So I will have a look into that, and we can discuss him on a future show for sure. The other story that I wanted to just quickly finish on before I come to focus solely on you guys' questions is the idea of Juventus signing Mesut Ozil on a 6-month loan deal. Italian outlet Tutto Sport claimed that Juve have had contact with the German's entourage and Arsenal are prepared to let him leave for free. The report also adds that the Gunners are willing to pay a portion of Ozil's £350,000 a week salary in order to facilitate the move, and a switch to Juventus would allow the playmaker to reunite with Cristiano Ronaldo, with the pair forming a formidable partnership like they did obviously at Real Madrid. So talk of a potential solution being found with the future of Mesut Ozil. For me, I'd be playing him right now, but I don't want to keep beating that drum. How often are we going to beat that drum? How much are we going to sort of keep talking about it? How many times we're going to keep going back to it? It just for me is such a bizarre situation. And the fact that a club like Juventus, who will be fighting at the top end of Serie A and hoping to make an impact in Europe, are interested in him, it tells you all you need to know about the player's quality and how highly he still is thought of around the continent. And it's obviously a really unfortunate situation with what's happened at the Emirates Stadium, but interesting to see that a club as and people talk about some of the clubs that have been linked with him and they say they're irrelevant clubs. Well, a club as relevant as Juventus, the current reigning Serie A champions, are interested in Mesut Ozil. So for me, that should tell you a lot. Right, let's have a look at some of your questions. Let's go over to the questions bit. Just a quick favor to ask from you all, actually. Some of you may have seen on Twitter that my Simply Serie A podcast is relaunching now. For those of you who don't know, just a quick update on what's going on there. So Simply Serie A was an Italian football podcast that myself, Vittorio Campanile, and Tommy Milanese used to do. It was absolutely fantastic fun. We all loved doing it, but unfortunately other commitments got in the way of that continuing. I found myself, having just started out in this kind of football media world, having to spend my time on other things so that I could kind of, make things sort of add up. And obviously when you've got a family to look after, you have to prioritize certain things. But sort of, if you haven't seen my recent news that I'm going fully back to freelancing in the start of the new year, that means I do have time again to work on Simply Serie A. I'm delighted to say that I've got some excellent contributors, some of the old heads and some new faces as well, are jumping on board with it. And Simply Serie A relaunches on the 4th of January. Now, Simply Serie A is predominantly an audio podcast, just like the way the Chronicles of a Gooner started out. But if you check out the description of this video, you will find a link to the channel. So could I please ask you all to do me a massive favor, click on the link when you're done here and subscribe to the Simply Serie A YouTube channel. You can subscribe to it on all major podcast stores as well. And if you wouldn't mind giving us a follow on Twitter at Simply Serie A as well, that would be great. So thank you in advance for your support. And I'm going to stream a few of the early episodes on this channel as well, so you guys can get a feel of what Simply Serie A is all about. And if you like what you're seeing, if you're enjoying the updates from the world of Italian football and the expert insight from the panelists, then I would love to see you guys come and subscribe over there as well. So really excited about getting back into Simply Serie A. I love Italian football. Those of you who've followed me for a while would know that. So really can't wait to do that, and look forward to some of you joining us over there. Right. Matt says, question, would you sack Arteta now and get a top manager, Allegri, but has no transfer money until the summer, or keep Arteta and give him 50 million in Jan? Okay, so would I sack Arteta now and swap him with a top manager, but that top manager will have no transfer funds until the summer, or would I keep Arteta and give him 50 million spend in January? Right now, I would keep Arteta and give him 50 million spend in January. That would be my answer right now, because I feel like and I've always maintained, I think that he deserves, as long as the position doesn't become untenable, as long as, he turns around the form, and there are signs that we might do that after that big win against Chelsea. If in the next 2-3 weeks he can continue that, then I would keep Arteta, because I think the FA Cup win gave him that little bit of leeway for me, at least until the end of the season. So I'd be willing to give Mikel Arteta, until the end of the season, but hope that the club would be able to back him to bring in that creative player that we're all talking about. We've all been debating on here in the last sort of 10-15 minutes or so about who is the right man for that position, who would be the right signing. So yeah, I'd like to see Mikel Arteta back there. But if the results don't improve, then obviously my view would be very, very different. So it's a really difficult question, obviously. But yeah, that's kind of where I stand on it now. Let's see what else you guys are saying. Brad Richardson says, do you think Arsenal should become partners with other clubs like what Man City and the Red Bull clubs do? Yeah, so that's a really complex structure. It's a complex ownership structure. Manchester City own the group that own Manchester City own a number of other clubs as well. And they do business together. You've got Olympiacos in Greece, owned by Marinakis, who also owns Nottingham Forest. So you see, relationships there. The Red Bull clubs, of course, have a very strong bond. So yeah, I think if you can make it work for you, then I don't think it's a bad thing. I just, with Arsenal's owners, I don't think have that sort of ambition of owning a group of clubs like Manchester City's do, or like the Red Bull guys do. So I can't see it happening, but I do think there are benefits to that. Yeah, I agree. Particularly in the Red Bull's case, where you've got the one team in the Austrian Bundesliga, which is almost like a carbon copy of the German Bundesliga in terms of the culture, the language, the style of football, but it is of a lower standard. So it gives players a really good platform to develop and learn before they move on to RB Leipzig in the Bundesliga, where the standard is higher. So yeah, I think in that case, but in particular, the relationship works really well. And yeah, as I said, I think there are many benefits to that, but I don't see Arsenal getting involved in anything like that. Yay 187ish says, Harriet, I feel it's gone the other way now. Clubs are buying more domestically because foreign clubs are inflating prices now too. Not really any bargains anymore. Yeah, I think the whole market's become inflated. It absolutely has. But I still think there are clubs in Europe that you can bully into moving players on, and to put that into context, there will be clubs in top leagues around Europe who earn less TV money and less revenue than some of the championship clubs, and that is why you can bully them, and clubs can be in all sorts of situations. They can have troublesome ownership, they can have financial issues that mean that they're desperate to sell at times. The appeal of the Premier League can turn players' heads very, very easily. For some, the idea of moving to London is huge as well. So I totally agree. I think the market's become very inflated everywhere now. But, to give you a prime example of, and I know this is a bit of an extreme example, but when you think that Manchester United paid £80 million for Harry Maguire, that absolute lump, yet, and then you look around Europe, nobody will convince me that you couldn't have got a better quality centre-back for £80 million from the continent. That Premier League premium is there. And I think the championship clubs, obviously being in that division below and understanding the financial power of the Premier League probably better than anybody from overseas, I think those clubs have now become alert to it as well, and they won't be pushed around either. So I still feel like there are better deals to be done and greater bargains on the continental market than there is in the Championship. And also, you know, some of those players on the continent would have played European football. They would have played for clubs where the pressure is massive. Maybe the standard of football isn't necessarily at the same level of the Premier League, but the pressure of playing for a massive club in, let's say, Portugal, it is bigger, I would say, than playing for a big Championship club, because that's just the way it is. Some of the Championship clubs have massive fan bases, great histories, etc. But the point I'm trying to get to is I just feel like the better bargains are probably still generally, and there will be anomalies to that, but generally are still on the continent. Let's see what else you guys are saying here. Indigeno says, Harry, how are you feeling? You're sounding better today than your most recent videos. Thank you so much, mate, for your well wishes. Yeah, I'm much better. I feel much better. Thank you very much for asking. I'd go as far as to say I'm probably fully over it now. A little bit tired, but I think that's partly because just the routine's just been shit. Been stuck at home as well, which is, I don't know, that makes me more tired. You know, I'm someone who likes to get out and about, and when you can't do that, I think you get into a little bit of a rut and you feel a little bit more tired and a little bit deflated. So yeah, I'll put it down to that. Let's see what else you guys are saying. Marching on Ozil to Juve. He says, needless to say, highly likely he will fit Juve great. He's a luxury player we can't accommodate. They will make the most of him with good setup around him. Yeah, agreed. Totally agree. Big hello to Banos. Kevin Jorn asks an interesting question. On the news, because obviously by the time you guys are listening to this on the audio, it will be the next morning. So, I apologize if this feels like it's a little bit out of date now, but Kevin asks, out of Arsenal context, how do you guys feel about the Everton Man City game being postponed? Should clubs be fined for these type of actions? The game is cancelled just 8 hours before kickoff. It's a really tough one, isn't it? Because I don't really understand what the kind of cutoff is. At what point does it have to get to for the Premier League to say, right, we can cancel the game? How many players have to test positive? It's a really tough one. We know that the spread of the virus is on the up. And whether you think it's as serious as some people do is another debate. And I'm not going to get into that debate. As you guys will have gathered from that last comment I read out, I've had the virus. I probably would still test positive for it now if I had a test, because it was just a few days ago, or 6-7 days ago that I tested positive. I've had it and it does drain the absolute life out of you. But when it comes to the Premier League, I'm not really sure. I don't understand why some clubs have had to play games with players missing because of it, and others have been able to have games postponed. So I find that a little bit uneasy. But as I said, totally appreciate that. I don't know the full ins and outs of the situation. At this moment, I don't know exactly how many City players have tested positive, who they've been in contact with, whether that Everton don't want to play the game because they don't want to be at risk. I don't know. There's so much to consider. So I don't really have a feeling either way, but I do find it a little bit uneasy that the rules seem to be different for certain clubs. So let's see how that goes. What else are you guys saying? Marches says, Harry, how about a joint stream with Sophie Rose? Give her a shout, mate, and let me know. George DJ Sooty says, Kevin Campbell, totally agree. We need to buy proven players in the Premiership, Championship. Perfect example is Zaha Pepe. Should have bought Zaha for 70 million, who's a proven Premier League player, rather than 72 million on Pepe, a player untested in the PL, and we're still waiting to see him turn up. But this is the thing with this one, George. So I am all for the Premier League proven players thing. The reason I don't want Buendia is because I don't think he is that. He had an okay time with Norwich in the Premier League, but that was it. So for me, Buendia is not anywhere near the levels of Wilfred Zaha. So that's why I don't liken the two situations. The problem when it comes to Nicolas Pepe is Arsenal were absolutely bent over. Let's not beat around the bush. You should have been able to get somebody like Nicolas Pepe for £40 million, £45 million. And if he did get signed for £45 million, then all of a sudden you're not so bitterly disappointed by the outputs that we've seen of him. The outputs that we've seen from him, Yeah, you'd argue that even for £40 million, he should have delivered more. But what I'm saying is that Arsenal made a real cock up when it comes to Nicolas Pepe and paying that type of money. You have to say that at this point. You don't often see clubs go in and buy in players from Ligue 1 for £72 million. You will see some exceptions to that. I'm sure Kylian Mbappe will be one of those one day, but he's an exceptional talent. But you don't often see players go and buy players from Ligue 1 for £70 million plus. And it's just proof that Arsenal got absolutely killed by doing that. And that was Arsenal's mistake. And the fact that Raul Sanllehi has been ousted out of the club off the back of that deal, amongst other things, tells you that. So I do think Arsenal made an error paying that much money for Nicolas Pepe. But most people, most clubs that are sensible anyway, don't go and pay that sort of money for Ligue 1 players. And that's why I still maintain that you could get decent quality players for cheaper than you can from fellow Premier League clubs. And that's why people do it. Spurs signed Tanguy and Ndombele from Lyon. I think that was around about 50 odd million quid. That one has done okay, I guess, at times. Fabinho joined from Monaco to Liverpool, £43 million. And Fabinho's an excellent player. So, that one worked out. Anthony Martial is another one, So Bernardo Silva, £40 odd million. Lacazette, £47 million, whatever it was. So, you normally see players join in from Ligue 1 for around that 40-45 million pound mark, the top Ligue 1 players, but is never usually in the region of 70 million pound. And that's why Arsenal have really had it handed to them in that one. And that's why people, I think, are obviously so up in arms about it and disappointed by it. See what else you guys are saying. Some of you asking me if I would sell Nicolas Pepe for 30 to 40 million pounds. I'd have a sit down with Nicolas Pepe if I was the boss and try and get in his head and try and understand where he's at. Because, he doesn't look happy at the moment. And that is a really big problem for me. Players can come, take time to settle, not ever reach their potential. And I get that. That happens a lot in football. There's been so many issues. So many issues. But, the basic is that he's got to want to succeed at Arsenal Football Club. And I'm not seeing that at the minute. I'm not seeing the desire from Nicolas Pepe. I'm not even seeing that look on his face of someone who really wants to be at the football club and really feels like this is where his future lies. And that is the biggest worry for me. If a significant bid came across the table, and by significant, I mean 35 to 40 million pound, I think I'd have to let him go. I would, based on what we're seeing from him so far. Dilly says, Harry, I've been meaning to ask you about the clause in Saliba's transfer that makes us pay £2.5 million if he starts 17 matches. Has to be a big reason why Arteta's waited on debuting him. No, I don't think so, mate. Arsenal went and handed Willian that ridiculous 3-year contract on massive money. They didn't hesitate in giving Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang what he wants. They know that Mesut Ozil will be off the wage bill. They managed to get Mkhitaryan off of the bill as well over the summer. So I don't think that's the case. I don't think that's got anything to do with it, if I'm being completely honest. I just think that Saliba, in the eyes of Mikel Arteta, rightly or wrongly, and I can't be a clear judge on that because I've not seen enough of Saliba. None of us have to make a definitive decision on that. I just don't think that Mikel thinks he's ready. And it's as simple as that for me. I don't think there is there is a anything else to that. I don't think it's because of that clause that you say is in his contract, and that's why Arsenal are not playing him. I don't think it's anything to do with finances. Let's see what else you're saying. Rohan says, what about Ricky Puig? Again, I don't know a great deal about this player, so I will do a video for you guys in the next few days when I've had a chance to look into him in a little bit more detail. Maybe I'll get someone on who knows their Spanish football and we can have a good chat about him, but I wouldn't be able to give you any insight on him at this moment in time. What else have we got here? Finally, I'm going to pick up one more. And while I pick up this final question, I want you guys to bombard the chat with where it is you are joining us from. Love to know where it is that you're tuned in from, so I can give you a shout out wherever it may be all around the world. Smash the like button, subscribe to the channel if you're new, subscribe to Simply Serie A as well. The link is in the description. So please head over there and show your support for that as well. It'd be much appreciated. And yeah, right. Marcin, talking about the players looking unhappy, he says, Harry, there is a question to ask. Why do so many players look unhappy at our squad? I think I think when it comes to Mikel Arteta, right, he's come into a job in which the job was always going to be a rebuilding one. And when you rebuild, you ruffle feathers because you're essentially saying by rebuilding and by trying to create a new dawn and something completely new, you're essentially saying that what is currently here is not good enough. And so you're always going to put people's noses out of joint when you do that. You're always going to put people's noses out of joint when they're not playing, particularly senior players. And so there will be unhappiness in the camp. The problem is that Mikel has to make sure that that unhappiness doesn't start impacting on the pitch. I think it has at times impacted on the pitch. And as I said on a previous stream, Mikel Arteta's inexperience as a manager has probably not helped in this situation. I think a more experienced campaigner probably knows how to deal with that a little bit more effectively, probably knows how to stop it sort of seeping into the roots of the team. And Mikel hasn't necessarily always been able to do that at times. There are a lot of bad apples in the squad. There are a lot of players who are unhappy for a number of reasons. And you've just got to trust that if you think that Mikel is the right man and you think that Mikel is the man that will build Arsenal up again and get them back to closer to where they need to be, then what you need to do is you need to trust him to move those players out. And it is going to take time because of contract situations that are no fault of his own. He is going to have to use some of those bad eggs and bad apples in the interim because we need them. They're part of our squad at the moment, and we haven't had the time nor the finances to replace all of those players. So it is weeding these players out and getting rid of the bad apples is a slow process, and it's going to take time. So, we can't blame Mikel for some of those players because I'm sure he would turn around and say, well, I don't care if he's unhappy because he's not part of my plans in the future anyway. So there is that to take into consideration too. Right, don't forget to let me know in the live chat where it is you are joining us from before we wrap up. I'm going to say a big shout out to some of you in the chat now, to Carrie, who's joining us from Finland, to Super Terabyte joining us from Colchester, not too far. Marcin is in West London. A Skywalker is in the Netherlands. Matt joins us from South London. Kia is in Banbury, Oxfordshire. Adesina is in North London, sorry. Alexander is in Durham, North Carolina. How you doing, mate? Matt has subscribed to Simply Serie A. He says, let's do this. Make sure, if you haven't already, it's in the description of this video. Subscribe to Simply Serie A. It's available on all major podcast stores as well. Please do so. I promise that if you're a fan of Italian football, you will love what we've got coming for you, starting from the 4th of January. Abe is joining us from Kerala in India. And McDowell's Human Resources Department says, make on GA. Scunny from Scunthorpe, thank you very much, mate. Says, good show, Harry. Cheers, mate. And thank you for tuning in. Really, really appreciate it. 87 Skin says tier 4. Neil joins us from South London. So a big shout out to every single one of you for joining us on another live edition of the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast. It's the transfer update show. We're going to be coming to you every single day throughout January. So make sure you're subscribed. Make sure your notifications are turned on, and we'll be back very, very soon with more. Until then, take care of yourselves and stay safe. All the best. Cheers.
You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner, the Arsenal podcast.
I'm Martin Tyler, and you're listening to Harry Symeou.